Hello, in this video I'm going to look at law enforcement in the period 1700 to 1900. So in the early 18th century, law enforcement continued to rely upon a combination of old methods such as parish constables, watchmen, and also part-time soldiers who dealt with riots and rebellions. But there were changes across this period too. One notable change was the Bow Street Runners who operated in London. They were a crime-fighting team that were established in London in 1748. Initially, they collected a fee for their services, but from 1785 they were paid by the government as the first modern detective force. They patrolled the streets in the evenings, investigated crimes and presented evidence in court. They then also introduced a horse patrol to stop highwaymen in and around London, which in effect ended highway robbery around London. They also had a newspaper called the Hue and Cry, which published information about criminals, crimes and stolen goods. Magistrates and jailers from all over the country then passed on details which created a national network of information. In some respects, this was the forerunner to the first actual police force. In 1829, the Metropolitan Police Force was set up. This split London into 17 districts. Each district had 4 inspectors and 144 constables. The focus was on deterring crimes, and officers were paid and they had a uniform. Now, at first, the pace of change in terms of policing was very slow outside of London, but then in 1835, the Municipal Corporations Act gave borough councils the power to set up local police forces, but many still hadn't done so by 1837. There was a Rural Constabulary Act of 1839, which allowed counties to organise the paid police force, but only 36 had done so by 1850. In 1842, a detective branch was set up in London, and then came an 1856 Police Act, which said areas had to have a professional police force that was centrally controlled. In 1878, we see the setting up of the CID, the Criminal Investigation Department, which was then expanded in 1883. And the first fingerprints were used to secure a conviction in 1902. Now, a key character that played a role in the reforms of policing was Robert Peel. His penal reforms of the 1820s were as follows. He reformed the penal code by reducing the number of crimes punishable by death by 100, and many minor crimes were punished more proportionately as a result. In 1823, the Jails Act introduced prison reforms. It said prisoners should get regular visits from prison chaplains, jailers were paid, female prisoners were watched over by female wardens, and prisoners were not to be held in chains. He was also crucial to the founding of the Metropolitan Police Force of 1829. This produced a centralised system for keeping the peace across London. These police officers had clear duties. They had to be of good character. Health and height requirements were also in place. The police officers had a uniform and equipment and were paid. These were very different to the old night watchman because it was organised in a military style and because it was paid and funded for through taxation. And as I've already said, it was also centrally organised. They had a headquarters and they focused on policing and did not do other public services. However, this new police force was initially criticised for being poorly trained, having recruits from dubious backgrounds, and having immoral tendencies. People also feared the police force would limit individual liberty and would be like having the army on the streets. Nonetheless, guidelines were drawn up for new recruits, and this was to reduce opposition to the police and provided the foundations of the modern policing that we have today.